Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I want to talk about something that may sound simple, but is actually very deep. The difference between knowledge and wisdom. At first, they may seem similar. Both involve learning, both involve thinking. But I believe they are not the same, and this difference matters for our lives and our future. Knowledge is about facts and information. It tells us what is true, what exists, and how things work. For example, knowing the formula for gravity, or the date when a war started, or how to use a new app. These are all examples of knowledge. It is important. Without knowledge, we cannot solve problems or make progress in science and technology. But wisdom is something different. Wisdom is about judgment and values. It is the ability to decide what should be done, not just what can be done. For instance, scientists may know how to use nuclear power. That is knowledge. But deciding whether to use it for energy or for weapons, that is wisdom. Doctors may know how to extend life with machines. But deciding whether to focus on treatment or on the patient, comfort, that is wisdom. In our daily lives too, we can see the difference. We may know many things from the internet, but using that information to make good choices for ourselves and others, that requires wisdom. We may know how to win an argument, but knowing when to stay silent to protect a friend's feelings, that is wisdom. This is why education should not stop at giving us knowledge. If school is only about memorizing facts, then we may end up being clever but not truly thoughtful. Real education must also train us to ask, what does this information mean? And why should I act based on it? In other words, education should aim to build wisdom, not just knowledge. The rise of AI makes this point even clearer. AI can process huge amounts of data and give us answers very quickly. It may even look like it knows things. But AI cannot tell us whether something is right or wrong. It cannot decide what is just or what is fair. That responsibility belongs to us as human beings. So I think the real challenge for our generation is not to collect more and more knowledge, but to use knowledge wisely. Wisdom means thinking beyond ourselves, considering the future, and choosing the path that brings good not only to us, but to others too. In conclusion, knowledge can fill our minds, but wisdom will shape our lives. If we learn to combine both, we can create a better society. But if we confuse them, we may become knowledgeable, but not truly wise. I hope that we, as students and as future citizens, will not only seek knowledge, but also strive for wisdom. Thank you.
All right, listeners. Today we are dropping a track that cuts deeper than data. It's about the line, the groove, the boundary between knowledge and wisdom. In a world where facts are at our fingertips, where answers come faster than the beat drops, here is the paradox. We may know more than ever, but do we truly live wiser lives? First, let's break down knowledge. Knowledge is powerful. It's facts, theories, discoveries. It's stuff we learn in classrooms and libraries. It's the ability to recite the law of gravity, to explain the structure of DNA, to know the capitals of every country. Knowledge is like a massive record collection. We've got every song, every genre, every remix cataloged. But owning the records is not the same as knowing when to play them or how to move a crowd. Now, flip it to wisdom. Wisdom is not about how many records you own, but how you mix them. When you drop them and how you read the vibe in the room. Wisdom is knowing not just what is true, but what to do. It's judgment, it's timing. It's understanding that even if you can build a machine, you must ask, should you? Wisdom is the beat that guides knowledge into action, the rhythm that turns facts into life. Why does this boundary matter? Because knowledge without wisdom can be dangerous. Think about technology. We know how to split the atom. That's knowledge. But using it to build nuclear weapons without considering the consequences, that's the absence of wisdom. Or think about the internet. We know how to design platforms that maximize attention. That's knowledge. But when those designs amplify addiction and division, we see what happens when wisdom is left behind. Here's the truth. Knowledge answers the question, can we? Wisdom answers the question, should we? And our age is overflowing with the first question but starving for the second. Let's talk education. Schools give us knowledge, facts, equations, analysis, and that's essential. But education must also prepare us for wisdom, how to weigh values, how to make choices when no formula can tell us the answer. A calculator can solve math problems, but it can't tell you whether to pursue profit at the cost of justice. That's a wisdom problem, not a knowledge one. And what about AI? Machines can replicate knowledge. They can generate essays, solve equations, even imitate human creativity. But can they be wise? Can they ask whether a decision is fair, or whether it honors human dignity? That's where the line between knowledge and wisdom becomes clear. Wisdom demands experience, empathy, and moral reflection, things no algorithm can simply compute. Now let's bring it back to us. In daily life, knowledge may tell you the nutritional content of every food on the menu. Wisdom tells you to share a meal with a friend because companionship matters as much as calories. Knowledge may teach you how to argue your point and win. Wisdom tells you when to stay silent, when to listen, when peace matters more than victory. So how do we cultivate wisdom in a world obsessed with knowledge? First, by slowing down. Information is instant, but wisdom takes time. Time to reflect, to discuss, to learn from mistakes. Second, by embracing uncertainty. Knowledge often wants clear answers. Wisdom recognizes ambiguity, complexity, and the limits of human control. And third, by connecting knowledge to values. Without values, knowledge is just data. With values, it becomes guidance. Let's not get it twisted. Knowledge is essential. Without it, wisdom has no foundation. But knowledge alone is not enough. The challenge is to blend the two, to build a culture where knowledge gives us the tools and wisdom shows us how to use them. So as we close this set, here's your refrain. Knowledge is knowing the score. Wisdom is playing it well. Knowledge fills your mind. Wisdom shapes your life. The next time you ask Google or ChatGPT or any source for an answer, ask yourself, do I just want to know or do I want to be wise? Because information is everywhere, knowledge is growing, but wisdom is rare. And in this age of noise and speed, wisdom may be the beat that saves us. That's today's mix. Stay sharp, stay humble, and keep turning knowledge into wisdom.
Let us begin with a paradox. We live in an era of unprecedented access to knowledge, at least what we often call knowledge. With the internet, digital libraries, and now artificial intelligence, information flows faster and more freely than ever before. By some measures, a teenager today has access to more facts, data, and ideas than the greatest scholars of past centuries. Yet we must ask, does this abundance of information make us truly wiser? This leads us to an ancient and enduring distinction, the difference between knowledge and wisdom. The two are often conflated, but they are not the same. Knowledge tells us what is. Wisdom guides us in deciding what ought to be done. Knowledge equips us with the tools. Wisdom teaches us how and whether to use them. Knowledge is power, but not always good knowledge is immensely valuable. It enables us to understand the laws of nature, the workings of the human body, the complexity of societies. It allows us to cure diseases, to build bridges, to explore space. Francis Bacon once said, "Knowledge is power." And indeed it is. But here lies the problem. Power can be used for good or ill. Knowledge of nuclear fission gave us nuclear energy, but also nuclear weapons. Knowledge of social psychology enables us to support people in crisis, but also to manipulate populations through propaganda. Knowledge of algorithms allows us to create connections across continents, but also to design addictive platforms that exploit human weakness. So the question becomes, what restrains knowledge? What transforms it into something not only powerful, but also good? Here enters wisdom. Wisdom as judgment. Wisdom is not simply more knowledge. It is a different quality altogether. Wisdom involves judgment, moral reflection, the ability to see beyond immediate utility to long-term consequence. It is not only about knowing facts, but about asking what those facts mean and what should follow from them. Think of a doctor. A physician may know the symptoms of a disease, the treatments available, and the probabilities of success. That is knowledge. But deciding whether to prolong life at all costs, or to prioritize comfort in a patient's final days, That requires wisdom. Or consider politics. A leader may know the economic data, the polling numbers, the historical precedents. That is knowledge. But deciding whether to act for short-term popularity or long-term justice, that requires wisdom. Knowledge without wisdom can be clever but reckless. Wisdom without knowledge can be well-intentioned but naive. Both are needed, but their roles are distinct. Education, beyond facts. This distinction matters especially in education. Too often, our schools and universities equate learning with the acquisition of knowledge, memorizing formulas, recalling historical dates, mastering technical skills. These are important, but education that stops there risks producing well-informed people who lack the wisdom to live well. Plato drew this line in his dialogues. He distinguished Sophia, wisdom, from episteme, knowledge. Knowledge was technical, the domain of craft and science. Wisdom was philosophical, ethical, oriented toward the good life. For Plato, education was not merely the transfer of knowledge, but the cultivation of wisdom. In our time, this distinction is even more urgent, for the internet gives us unlimited knowledge in seconds, but wisdom, the ability to sift, to question, to discern meaning, cannot be downloaded. It requires dialogue, reflection, and community. AI and the limits of knowledge. The rise of artificial intelligence brings this question into sharp relief. AI systems can summarize texts, write essays, solve equations, even imitate human creativity. Does this mean AI possesses knowledge? In a limited sense, perhaps, but wisdom? Clearly not. AI can answer the question, can it be done? But it cannot ask, should it be done? It can optimize for efficiency, but it cannot deliberate about justice. It can mimic patterns, but it cannot reflect on meaning. This is not a defect of the technology. It is a reminder of the essential human role in shaping how knowledge is used. If we forget this, we risk handing over not only our tasks, but our moral agency to machines, confusing calculation with judgment, information with wisdom. Wisdom as moral practice. Wisdom, then, is not merely a cognitive achievement. It is a moral practice. To be wise is to exercise humility, to recognize limits, to balance competing goods. It is to see that not every possibility should be pursued, that not every piece of knowledge should be applied. Here we might recall the story of King Solomon, renowned for wisdom. When asked to resolve a dispute between two women claiming to be the mother of a child, he did not simply apply knowledge of law or custom. Instead, he devised a test that revealed compassion and truth. His wisdom was not in possessing more facts, but in perceiving the deeper moral reality. Why the distinction matters today? Why insist on the boundary between knowledge and wisdom? Because without it, we mistake cleverness for virtue. We live in a society that prizes expertise, credentials, data, but expertise alone does not tell us how to live together, how to distribute resources fairly, how to care for the vulnerable. If we reduce education to knowledge, we risk producing skilled technicians who may design systems of great efficiency but little humanity. If we reduce politics to knowledge, we risk leaders who cite statistics while ignoring justice. If we reduce human life to knowledge, we risk forgetting what it means to be wise. Closing reflections, so let us return to the paradox. We know more than ever before, but are we wiser? The answer depends on whether we can honor the boundary between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge asks, what is true? Wisdom asks, what is right? Knowledge asks, what can we do? Wisdom asks, what should we do? The future of our society, our technology, even our humanity may depend on whether we can cultivate not only knowledge but wisdom. And this is not a task for machines. It is our task as citizens, as communities, as human beings. So I leave you with this question. In your own life, are you content with knowledge, or are you seeking wisdom? For knowledge may fill your mind, but wisdom will shape your life. And perhaps, in this restless age of speed and noise, wisdom is the one thing we cannot afford to lose.